Welcome to Shepherding the Home. We continue in Deuteronomy 6, verses 13 to 19 today, where we have warnings against idolatry, and specifically the ways in which those things take us away from God, and how we cannot be kind of divided in our allegiance. And so let's take a look at our text. As we look at these verses, 13 to 19, specifically, we're going to see some things related to idolatry. You'll notice some highlighted things here. Serve him only, right? Making oaths in God's name. Not going after the gods of the peoples around us. Getting into the character of God as a jealous God, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, his response to destroy that which is not devoted to him. And then also kind of this command then, because of God's character, don't put him to the test, follow his commands, do what is good and right, specifically in his sight, right, rather than in the sight of the people around us. And then ultimately there is a result of that, so that, right, it will go well with you in the land that God is placing us. And so here we kind of bring up just this reality of the idolatry and the war that goes on within us. Specifically here it talks about the gods of the people around you. And whenever we're looking at the Old Testament, we definitely see over and over and over again that God's people commit idolatry. One of the greatest benefits I've seen of reading through the entire Bible is you just see the predominance of God's people committing idolatry. You can't read through the whole scriptures without getting down to, we say all the time, what is the root of our issue of sin, but specifically you really start to just see what is sin? Well, it's idolatry. Right? It's trusting in something other than God, or moving in our hearts and our minds and our love towards something other than God. And so, what are the gods of the people around you? Well, for the Israelites going into the land, yes, those gods had names like Baal and Asherah, but really, you get down to it, it's prosperity, it's sex, it's the same types of gods that are in the world around us. And so we really start to wrestle with, are we serving God only? Is our devotion and our oaths and our commitments to him, or is it to kind of the things of this world, and we'll go anywhere we can in order to get those things? And so we get into sort of this character of a God, right? God is a jealous God. Why is God a jealous God? Well, because he's the creator. He created everything, and it's crazy to think that we worship created things rather than the creator. And so he gets angry. He is to be the only one worthy of worship. And that doesn't always set well with us, because usually we use the term jealous in a negative sense. If I were a jealous person, that's a negative connotation. I shouldn't be jealous. And the reason I shouldn't be jealous is because I'm not deserving of it. If I were to say all your attention should be put on me, well, he'd be like, what? You don't deserve that. You're not any better than me. But when you put this into God, it makes sense. It really does. He is deserving. He is the creator. And to place honor and worship and devotion into the things he made rather than him, they're jealous. Really seems to make sense. God says, I need to be placed in the right place. If you look at this quote up here, it's really interesting. The word priority, and I know that's not in our text, but we're sort of getting into the first thing, right? What is ultimate? The word priority came into the English language in the 1400s. It was singular. It meant that very first or prior thing. It stayed singular for the next 500 years. Only in the 1900s did we pluralize the term and start talking about priorities. Illogically, we reasoned that by changing the word, we could bend reality. Somehow we would now be able to have multiple first things. And I bring this up because a lot of times we talk about, God, family, country, or something like that, top priorities. Or we look at our week and we start to say, well, what's my priorities? Or how do I put first things first, right? But I'm doing this in a plural sense. And part of what we get from Scripture is just God is the priority, singular. It's not kind of rearranging. It's not, him then something else. It's just him. And everything else lines up through him as he directs us. Why is my family important, right? Why is discipling my kids important? Why are those things important? Well, because God said they're important, right? Not that, I say, well, God's most important, then I'm going to pick my family second, and other people can pick their, no, it's God and it's God and it's God. It's always God. And he's a jealous God and says, hey, come to me. I direct these things. I'm the priority. And we've gotten just, it said 1900s. Wow, have things even changed all the more where people are pretty unabashedly kind of God's not first, or at least specifically God in the way that he prescribes things is not first. We can maybe generically say God is first, but we don't have to listen to him or what he says. So God says, whoa, here's a warning, right? Don't put the Lord your God to the test. Kind of lower him down on the scale, right? Or even put him on a scale. He alone, right, should be our priority. Be sure, then, to keep his commands. If he's first, walk in his ways. Keep the commands of the Lord your God, his stipulations, his decrees. Do what is right and good in his sight, not what's in your own sight or a sight of the world around you. I put a Tolstoy quote up here. Wealth is a great sin in the eyes of God, right? Poverty is a great sin in the eyes of man. Just recognizing God alone truly knows what is good and right. And so seeking to do what is right in his eyes, not in the eyes of the world around us. And we're so tempted to do what will get praise there rather than what honors our Father. And he says, ultimately, there is a result from this so that it may go well with you. Now, there's some challenges there. It doesn't mean it will go well and that everything will be easy, right? But it'll go well with you. You go in and take over the good land the Lord promised you. We're going to talk in the next video a little bit about just the collective nature of that. But ultimately, making God first brings about the wellness God desires. Not necessarily what the world desires, right? But the good things that God desires for you and your family are centered in having him the priority, him being first. Idolatry, as you read through the scriptures, brings nothing but destruction for God's people. Where devotion unto God, first commandment issues, you shall have no other gods before me. Those things bring about the blessings that God desires. So there you have. Beware of idolatry. We're going to take a little bit of time just to talk about application of this text. As we discuss application of this text relating to idolatry, I think I just want to give maybe a few examples I wrestle with. One would be family devotion time. The other would be probably worship time, and I don't want to spend sort of give the idea that's everything relationship to idolatry, but it is significant when we sort of say what's our priority, and so we wrestle kind of application. Does the rest of our schedule does it get bumped or changed in order to keep our devotion to God in our home, family worship, and our devotion to God church-wise, corporate worship? Does that come first? Is that non-negotiable is kind of the thing. And I'll tell you, I'm a pastor, and so being at worship, corporate worship, is it's just kind of done. But there are a couple times a year where I have the weekend off. Opportunity to be on vacation or to be somewhere else, and there it kind of becomes, are you on vacation? You're in church every single week. Is it okay to skip? Or specifically, I might bring up this example. We took a trip for my son's surgery to another state, and Sunday morning was the day we were gonna leave and drive all the way back to South Dakota, and so there it's kind of, well, we gotta get up early, gotta get back, got a long trip, and the temptation is, well, don't go to church. And then you gotta start to say, well, okay, well, what's my God here? What's my priority? Is it getting on the road early? Is it getting back sooner? Is it sleeping in, having a little more rest? Is it a long weekend? And so there's that real challenge. And then in some ways I would say it's even doubly significant related to my situation, because it's sort of there my actions would speak to my kids that Dad goes to church when it's his job, but here's the weekend where he doesn't have to for work, and he decided he wanted to get on the road a little bit sooner, or he wanted to sleep in a little bit later. And I'm not saying that doesn't communicate only for me. I think if we're really honest, we start to look at kind of our schedule and what we do. Everything we do communicates something. And does it communicate that God is the priority? Or does it communicate something else is the priority? And sometimes it's really subtle and we don't really think about it, but what we're doing communicates. Same can be true with family worship. I got a kind of a busy day, and so somehow I find that I had time to do a number of things, and because there were all those things I wanted to do, time for family worship didn't happen. And what does that communicate? It communicates that, well, God wasn't really the most important thing for us to center around today. It's actually kind of amazing. At times I've had days that I didn't have a lot going on, and sometimes I was even worse on those days, where laziness slips in, and so there's a lot of times with confession of sort of, I dropped the ball here. We didn't make God the priority today, and so this is a constant sin challenge of confession, of seeking God's forgiveness, of forgiveness to one another, where we don't make God the priority. But then again, it's not this wrestling of, okay, we got to get God back up where he belongs. It's like, no, God is the priority in all things. God is to be honored and glorified, and everything else in our schedule really should be to God's glory as well. So those are kind of some things maybe just to wrestle with. Not just to attack, church attendance or something, but it just, we really have to wrestle in our world today with so much idolatry that our lives can all of a sudden start to center around things other than God. And there's just a need for repentance. I also just want to make quick note, if you ever get a chance, I'll put a link in the description to read Family Driven Faith by Bodhi Bacham. He has this story in there called the Thomas story. Just fantastic. And there he's talking about baseball, but it could be anything else. But just the ramifications for the kind of the center of our universe really being something other than God. And we kind of keep God tertiary. We don't let him go completely, right? But when our true love is something other than God, if we really think about long term, it has huge ramifications for us. So just encourage you towards that resource as well. But God bless you as you kind of wrestle with idolatry. It's significant. It's not just an Old Testament thing. It's significant in the daily lives of all of us. Is God the priority, or is he not? And God is a jealous God, simply meaning he alone deserves to be the priority in our lives. So God be with you.